Hey guys, it's Spacey Sims, and we are back with more Paradigm Paradox, continuing Hugo's route. Now, we kind of already read this line and the one after it, like, in the last part, but I kind of, like, rewound a little bit. I was like, let's, whatever. So, we had been talking to Hugo. He's about to tell us stuff about ourselves, and that's kind of where we cock-blocked all of us, because we were, like, 10 minutes over, so. Anyway, so I rewound a little bit, so. He just brought us into mugs of tea, and we're going to have a nice discussion. Okay, well, I mentioned I was a researcher. I'll start with what I knew then. I gazed at the steam rising from the mug as Hugo dug through his memories and began recounting them to me. You already get that the Vectors were once human, yeah? Yes, I know that much. After all, Lizzie had nearly turned into a Vector right before my eyes. I knew all about it. You haven't noticed anything odd since you came here? Odd? Granted, there are a lot of odd things here, but seeing Vectors in such a calm state, that's something I never would have imagined. Maybe that's normal behavior. This is the Vectors' colony, after all, but I don't think that's what Hugo's referring to. After watching me mull it over for a moment, Hugo offered a hint. Anyone who gets scratched by a Vector turns into one, right? So when you look at the number of Vectors here, that means a lot of people got scratched. Doesn't that seem odd to you? He gave me a few more seconds to process what he was saying. Oh. So you figured it out. There's a surplus of Vectors here. Maybe that's why the colony's in disarray, because everybody that lived here is a Vector. Uh-huh. Where do you think they all came from? I guess maybe from some colony where they lived when they were still human. And where would that be? Here? Only one colony was within any reasonable range of the Vectors colony, and that was Theta? My home colony? Oh, I would have said here, because, why is this colony empty? I was afraid to hear the answer, but Hugo posed another question instead of giving me one. When you fought with the Blooms, did you ever see any humans get attacked by the Vectors? Huh? No, I never actually saw it happen. They were attacking buildings and destroying, buildings, but attacking buildings and destroying buildings and the buildings, the buildings? They were usually attacked when people weren't around. I only saw Lizzie and, me. That's all. But with the number of Vectors here, did that many people inside Theta get scratched? Vectors only showed up at night. Very few people were around during those hours given the curfew, so there was little risk of being attacked in Theta. That is an interesting point, yeah. And a lot of people got attacked when they showed up during the day, but that was, I think, the first time they showed... Well, not the first time. But they showed up during the day. Everybody went running. Nobody really got attacked that day. We defeated them. But then the one other day when Lizzie got attacked, that's the only time people got attacked. You know what I mean? And that's only because Hugo, Moravia, and Yukonami brought the Vectors in specifically and probably let them run wild. So aside from their intervention, nobody is really ever out at night when the Vectors might be out. Most people in the colony don't even know about the Vectors or the Blooms. They were considered urban legends. That had to mean only a very small number of people actually changed after a Vector attack. That one day, though, the Vectors did attack during the day. That's why so many people were hurt. Usually there'd almost never be casualties. In other words, very few people in Theta have actually had a violent encounter with a Vector. Let me clarify something. Vectors are living things, but they're also different from life as you know it. Their bodies break down after death. Also, they don't eat. They don't breed or otherwise propagate their species, neither. But the number of Vectors in this colony steadily increased since I arrived. You know what that means. Are you saying new Vectors are coming in from Theta? Because they're doing science experiments. Hugo nodded solemnly, which snuffed out my intention to dismiss the idea as a silly conspiracy. Which, I think I am not surprised about, because I think that was one of the ideas we threw out, is they're doing experiments maybe to try to figure out a way to get humans to be able to breathe in the air outside, because if we can't fix the environment, we learn how to fix humans to make them adapt to the environment, but we don't have thousands of years to adapt to the, you know what I mean? So, science. We're going to use science to adapt to the environment. And they created the Vectors. And they're like, shit. Oh, I throw them out. All right, let's try again. And then they're trying to create humans that can breathe outside and whatever, so we don't have to stay in tiny colonies. We can repopulate our planet, but they keep making vectors. Because I can't see any other reason why they're like, let's make vectors. And then they're like, oh my God, vectors are attacking. Why would they do that? The vectors have to be because like, well, we're experimenting on humans trying to whatever. And then they just turn and make vectors by accident and they just are not, you know what I mean? Because they're just doing human experimentation. I feel like that's been obvious though. Hugo nodded solemnly, which snuffed out my intention to dismiss the idea as a silly conspiracy. That's what I think. But that doesn't make sense. Theta's a large colony with a large population. If a bunch of people went missing, it would cause an uproar. When I lived there, I never recalled hearing reports about groups of people vanishing. There was talk about monsters attacking people, but I just dismissed all that as a rumor. Then something odd struck me as I voiced my thoughts. Look at everybody else's parents who disappeared. Like, Mihaya's parents died outside because of the air. So, okay. But, like, did Kamui's parents really die in an accident? You know what I mean? Did you see the bodies? Wait, is the vector transformation triggered some other way? Bingo. Most of the ones that live here aren't humans who changed after an attack. Maybe they reproduce by splitting in two? Like cells? Hugo shook his head and frowned at the hopeful tone of my voice. Your mind sure goes places, I'll give you that. But no, you're wrong. Yeah, I figured as much. Vectors don't split or anything like that. From what I've seen, there seems to be two ways new vectors are born. Hugo put one finger up. First, person gets attacked by one. That's what happened to Lizzie and me. Second, they can be created on purpose. I wasn't expecting him to say that. I was. What do you mean, created? Like, grown in a lab or something? But who? Remember who tried to isolate Lizzie when she was shifting into a vector? There was only one answer, and I remembered it all too well, as chilling as it was. You mean, the researchers? Yep. Hugo nodded briefly, and I felt my chest become heavy. I really wanted him to tell me I was wrong, but no. Apparently it was just as I feared. The research district's whole purpose is to find ways to help humankind. Why would they do that? Because they're trying to find ways to help humans adapt to the environment outside. You can't really fault that logic and be like, horrible researchers trying to find ways to make us adapt to the outside environment. Right? Noble purpose. However, you're turning people into vectors, so like, maybe don't do that. Like, what are you, Hojo from fucking Final Fantasy VII? Stop that. Stop it. I feel like you stole some ideas from them. I'm starting to feel that way. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, maybe don't experiment on humans. Don't like do weird shit like this. Stop it. You know what I mean? But the thing is like, how else are they going to see if their medicines or vaccines or antibody or anything works if not human experimentation? That's still kind of fucked up though. You know what I mean? It's one thing to volunteer if you're like, yeah, no, I'll volunteer, like, whatevs. You know, or you're a criminal and they're like, well, this guy's a criminal. Fine, listen. I mean, I don't mean you got arrested for pot. I mean, like, you're a murderer or, like, you assault kids or something. Then I think you should be allowed to be experimented on by, you know, research. Human experimentation, you should be the first volunteer because you don't get to sit in, like, you know, I know a lot of people don't believe in the death penalty because, like, that's wrong, like, whatever. But, like, you're going to sit there in prison, like, and I don't think prison's fun. I don't want to go to prison. But, like, you're a horrible human being and we're like, here's 3 meals a day. And you're like, no, let's human experiment on them. Sounds good. In this world that we're living in, this hellhole where we can't go outside without dying, use the criminals. There's probably not a lot of criminals, to be fair, in this world. Although, to be fair, in this world, the side that we're on right now would be the quote-unquote criminals, and it's like, they're not really wrong, though, so gray area here. But you've got to have... Really? We're living so far in the future, nobody murders or, like... Really? Nobody? Cool. That actually sounds awesome. Yeah, sure, the environment's a hellscape outside, but, like, nobody's stabbing anybody. Nobody's breaking in your house. Like, that's pretty cool. We've gotten rid of crime? I don't know. The vector problem's a little less, you know? We have no laws. We apparently don't need a legal system because we don't have any criminals, so that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Well, that's probably why the researchers are running amok then, though, so... Then do the researchers have to do the human experimentation on themselves because they're technically crossing the line and, like, turning humans into monsters, which is, like, that's kind of fucked up, dude. You know, they're, like, kidnapping people and turning them into monsters, so now we're in a loop. I don't know. How does mass-producing vectors help anyone? Also, yeah, if you're creating them in a lab, what are you trying to do with them? You know what I mean? That is weird. It's not like I'm injecting people with this vaccine I created thinking it'll help us breathe outside, and then they turn into monsters, and we try to change it, and they still turn into monsters, and, like, we can't quite, you know, figure out the balance. You're actually just creating vectors from scratch in a lab, like in a petri dish. That is questionable and wondering, like, why? You know? I sat up abruptly, forgetting my pain. Hugo pat my shoulder to try and calm me. Relax. Don't forget you're injured. Sorry. I had admittedly gotten pretty fired up. It was just such a shock. Hugo waited for me to calm down before he continued. Still speculation at this point. When I was a researcher, I wasn't on any of the teams that had anything to do with all that. Right. He was in a different field. Yeah, and he had no idea about the vectors because that was a shock to see one. I had to admit, it was a relief to know Hugo had nothing to do with the creation of vectors. I can tell you for certain that most of the research done there was for humanity's benefit. The professor might know. And maybe that's why... Okay, wait. Maybe that's why if you... I mean, you could do Hugo or Economies either way, right? But if you did Hugo's first, you'd hear all this. Then in Economies, you meet the professor, and then you're like, I wonder who might know about the vectors and have done that kind of research. Well, obviously... Well, we know it was obviously the professor, so we didn't have to make that leap because he said he worked with Economy and Moravia. So... Yeah, okay, I could see where Hugo's leads into Economies a little bit better, but again, I don't think it's, you know, it's not like, oh man, we totally spoiled Economies, you know, or Hugo's or vice versa. It's like, oh, but what Hugo's saying, you know, you wouldn't know at this point. And then you go down and then you meet the professor and you're like, oh, there you go. But, and now we just get to make that a point now, like, oh, the professor though. You know, we know researchers who were doing that, but we barely said anything to him, so more important in Ibuki and Ryo's route, probably. My field was environmental engineering. I was involved in Project Enviro Rejuvenation. We were trying to find ways to fix the ecosystem. Yeah, see, and I think the researchers who were trying to fix people by turning them into monsters, albeit, okay, might be have a more of a benefit, because, like, it's probably easier to, like, fix a handful of people to adapt to the environment than fixing the entire fucking environment. Because I feel like fixing the environment is gonna take a long motherfucking time. Like a long-ass motherfucking time. You know? It's gonna be like someday our great 3 hours later, grandkids will be able to breathe outside again. You know what I mean? We wanted to make the outside world fit for human habitation again. It's a pretty ambitious project. Yeah. A long one, too. Ran on for years, but in that time we never obtained any useful results. And even if you did, it's gonna take fucking ages to fix the outside environment. So at some point they decided to switch up their approach. I don't know the details, but research branched off in a different direction. Right. If we can't fix the environment, let's fix the people to adapt to the environment. Which, to be honest, they're not noble idea, but they're probably doing it in not so noble ways. Forget the environment. Change humans instead. What did I tell you? Change humans? The idea sounded like it might have promise, but Hugo's face stated otherwise. Yeah, if you can't alter the environment to suit people, alter people to suit the environment. Doesn't sound bad on paper. Yeah, I mean, it sounds awesome on paper. It's like a great idea. just depends on your execution, which we know is where the problem lies. The idea is logical. Humans are small and adaptive. The ecosystem's huge and much harder to change. So they started a new initiative. Project Enviro Adaptation. Project Enviro Adaptation. I feel like this is the dumbest name ever, too, because Project Enviro. Who says that? You're like, I gotta adapt to my enviro. What are you, a Zoomer? Like, kind of weird ass, like, that just sound... Yeah, bro, I gotta adapt to my enviro. Like, environment. Just say environment. Project Environmental Adaptation. Just say that, because it sounds so stupid when you're like, Project Enviro Adaptation. No. I question the intelligence of your researchers for some fucking reason. Like, Project Environmental Adaptation. Okay. Sounds logical. Sounds like a scientist came up with it. Okay. I don't know why. Is it just me that is bothered by enviro instead of environment? Just say environment. Like, there's just... I'm getting so fucking old. Certain words just annoy me. Like that, I don't know why. I'm like, no, please stop. You've made me read it like 4 times now, and I'm like, nope. Don't like it. It's like, comfortability. Jesus Christ. I hate that so fucking much. I cannot take you seriously as a human being with brain cells if you say comfortability. Have we had this conversation before? It's about my comfortability. No, it's your comfort level. Comfortability? It's not like I abbreviated a word to like... You know what I mean? Like, you say Riz instead of charisma. Okay. It takes less time to say Riz. Still sounds silly, but like, fine, I get it. Like, whatever, say what you want. But comfortability, shut the fuck up. I will slap you. I'm sorry, if you say that, please stop. Because you sound like an idiot. It sounds so stupid. Comfortability, it's your comfort level. There's no such thing as comfortability. I don't care if Merriam-Webster decides to put it in the dictionary. They're stupid and wrong. Okay? They're stupid and wrong for trying to include... Like, people say it, so no, it's not a word. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Tweaks me out. I was at work on a call, like, I've heard it on YouTube before, like, there's one particular person says it, and I'm like, every time I want to throw something at my screen, like, stop it, you sound so dumb. Like, I don't know what it is, why it triggers me like that. But, like... I was on a work call and some girl like said it like comfortability and I was like, oh hell no, you did not just whip that out. No, you were on a goddamn business call. You do not whip out stupid words like that. Oh my god. I don't know if she's just really young and is like, comfortability is like a cool trend term and it's like, please stop. You know, I mean, we all had those, don't get me wrong. Okay. We all had them. Like, when we were in high school, we all had stupid terms that we said, and, like, now you're like, yeah, that was dumb. Like, you know? And some of them stick in your vocabulary for forever, and that's fine. Comfortability should not be one of those. It's just so dumb. So, enviro is up there. Yeah, it's like the enviro, bro. Like, I don't know why you just sound like a stoned surfer when you say that. So, I can't take you seriously, or any researcher who came up with this. I need a drink. Stupid shit like this irritates me. What fun would life be if stupid shit didn't irritate you and you were chill with everything? You know what I'm saying? If he says it again, I swear to God. The project began way before I was brought on as a researcher, but it was top secret. From what I heard, the Brass and Theta really expected the initiative to save humankind. If that's the case, why keep such an amazing project under wraps? Because if you told people, we are going to create a project so we can all breathe outside, everyone would be like, what? And then in 2 days, when you didn't have it figured out, people would be like, what are you, stupid? The fuck? Why didn't you figure it out? Because people are assholes. They would not understand that it takes time. Plus, the second you were like, yeah, we can maybe do that. We're going to need to experiment on people? Whoa. Not cool. And people are going to be like, boo, no, forget it. We're fine staying in our bubble kingdoms. And then there goes that. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes you just keep your mouth shut and you're like, shh, don't tell anybody. It's a great idea, but we have to experiment on humans. So, like, maybe we just don't tell anybody and we do it in secret. And they're like, good idea. And then when we're closer, we'd be like, we have been working on this. We didn't tell you because we didn't want to get your hopes up, but we figured it out, guys. Woohoo! And then everyone's like, wow! And it's all exciting for people, and then they have no idea you experiment. I can understand it. You can absolutely follow the logic on why they didn't tell anyone. Not saying it's not shady, but I can get it. Simple. Because the research was inhumane. Exactly. And even though it seems like there are no laws, because we don't have lawyers and we don't have criminals that we know of, nobody ever said anything about going to visit the prison, morality still exists, you know? I gripped the mug in my hands and grit my teeth. I've been spared up until now, but the truth, it was painful. When I was a researcher, Project Environmental Adaptation, I'm not saying it, was a secret subset under Project Environmental Rejuvenation. Project Environmental Rejuvenation also just flows off your tongue easier, surprisingly, than Project Enviro Rejuvenation. No. Better to say that we were working on the land, not experiment on people. Better PR. Yeah, regular civilians would definitely see it that way. But Project Environmental Adaptation took up most of our resources, and the brass wanted it to be the main focus. The number of researchers who knew all the details about Project Environmental Adaptation was limited. I only knew the bare basics. I hate the fact that they're putting Enviro in here. It's making me mad every time I see it. Hyuga swirled his tea around in his mug with a faraway look in his eyes. It is like, okay, what is it? Oh god, now I forget what it is. But in Love and Deep Space, right, the new chapters came out. Well, it's like Zane's split off stuff, which isn't really much of a chapter right now. I haven't read too much of it, but there's one and it is, it's like Operation, because you're looking for the ether cores. Operation Ether something. And it's just, you're like, really? Like a 4-year-old came up with that. It's the dumbest fucking, was it like, it's not initiative. What is it fucking called? Oh god. Or it's like, it is something and it is so stupid. It's the stupidest thing. You're like, you're reading and you're like, okay, we're going on this mission. And then they give the mission name and you're like, what? Why is this so dumb? What the actual fuck? It's the stupidest thing. That's how I feel every time I have to read Enviro in here. It's like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Who came up with this? No. You know what? Did Tim and Ronald come up with, put them in the corner, smack them on the nose with a rolled up newspaper and put them in the corner. Bad vectors. Bad. Learn real human language. It's a stupid thing to be annoyed about, but it just bothers me. Anyway. Oh, God. But I knew something rotten was going down. I heard rumors. Rumors about humans being experimented on. Yeah. I try not to think too deeply about it. We all kept our nose out of Project Environmental Adaptation business. And one day I was sent outside Theta against my wishes to do environmental research. This is starting to sound more like a setup than an accident. Okay, well, it wasn't really an accident, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna guess Hyuga, knowing maybe human experimentation, kept his nose out of business, but maybe said something, whatever, and was like, wait, are they really experimenting people? Because I don't think that's right. Somehow somebody knew that you had a problem with this and thought, this guy's going to be a problem. Oh, hey, you're going outside against your wishes. And then team leader was like, shove him in front of the monster. They're like, find a way to get rid of him. Accidentally puncture his suit. They were I feel like they were planning to kill Hyuga out there. And this opportunity just presented itself and they were like, sweet. Yeah. I feel like this was a drive him out to the desert, you know, take him out to a lake in the dark and give him some cement shoes and push him, you know, this is a mafia hit that was happening right about now. I nodded, unsure of how to feel. Hyuga was attacked by vectors that day and his fate was changed forever, which again, I don't know if they knew that the monsters were out there, but they were definitely planning to leave him for dead out there. I never seen a vector before being attacked. I had no idea what they even were. Then before I knew it, I was a Vector myself. I was brought back to this colony and I met Yukonami and Moravia. Suddenly everything made sense. I wondered what he meant by everything. How are Yukonami and Moravia involved in this? Those two don't talk much about their pasts, but I was able to piece things together. Found out they were raised in one of Theta's labs. Okay, we knew that. What? I was so shocked to hear that, I couldn't help but let out a shout. Still, I don't think it's impossible. I think the two of them were created as part of Project Environmental Adaptation. They're new humans, ones that can survive outside. Survive? Outside? I muttered to myself as I tried to process everything. It was all so unbelievable, I didn't know what to think. But it makes sense in retrospect. That would explain why they never need protective suits outside, and why they're so powerful. But here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. Hyuga's acting like he and Yukonami aren't the same. Now, different paths to get there, because Yukonami was basically created in the lab, or they took a baby and did an experiment, or whatever. However, he was either born from a petri dish, or they took a child and, did some experimentation on it and whatever. However they did that, because they never really explained that. He was raised in the lab and born in the lab, but it's like, do you actually have parents? Did they just magically create you? Did they take, a sperm and an egg and make a fetus and then, inject it with things and then raise you from a you know what I mean? How exactly? They didn't really go over that. So anyway, we don't really know if he was straight up petri dish raised, or cloned somehow, or 3D printed, whatever. This woman's pregnant, let's inject her with shit. We don't really quite know exactly how he was born in the lab, but whatever. Hyuga was attacked by a Vector and then given the antibody, but they both have the same abilities. So whether you were attacked by a Vector and then given the antibody, and then now you have the little, pearly thingy, the charm thing, or not, and I think Yukonami has one too. He just doesn't realize it, but he doesn't need to transform. But both of them can go outside because they're both part Vector, right? Moravia is a little different because she needs to transform like we do. So it's again, we're all different levels of somehow Vector, somehow adaptive human, but on what level are we? Would they think Yukonami and Hyuga are the lowest level? Because, they still kind of are monstrous. But, Moravia is probably the best because, she's got antibodies and she's super strong and shit. But, unfortunately, she has to transform. And then the byproduct of transforming is transforming into a magical girl. Which could be really confusing. But, there's downsides to both, to the way, technically both the magical girls and the Vector boys work, you know what I mean? But we're all just different sides of the same fucked up coin here. But why are they all the way out here now instead of inside a lab in Theta? I don't know the details, but I assume they escaped, maybe with the help of the professor. I see. That sounded likely. I couldn't imagine those two would stand for being locked up and treated like lab rats. Hyuga couldn't resist throwing in a complaint. They weren't raised in a normal environment, so of course they don't know anything about cleaning or cooking for themselves. I had to step up. I'm the only one who could. I owed them a course, but more than that, I couldn't just let all that stuff go undone. It was technically a complaint, yes, but I could tell he didn't really mind as much as he let on. Definitely a mother hen. I had to choke back a laugh that nearly escaped and shattered the serious atmosphere. But we're way off track now. Anyway, yeah. I'm sure Moravia and Yukonami came from a research lab. When I started living here, that's when I also noticed the rate vectors were increasing. When I started living here, that's when I also noticed that the rate vectors were increasing by was odd. While studying the vectors, I started to take note of the different characteristics they have. That's interesting. And that way I could tell when a new vector appeared. It was like a crude tagging system. And that's how I was able to tell without a doubt that the herd was increasing. It was as if they were being brought in from somewhere else. Hugo looked a bit doubtful for a moment. He shook his head as if reassuring himself. When I noticed it, I confronted Ibuki and Yukonami about it. Why didn't you stop this? You're more than powerful enough. You should have wiped them all out. Just calm down. Calm down? You insane? Damn it, if you two won't act, then I'll... You can't. Ibuki, why won't you do anything? We're waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for an answer. Hyuga, Huh? Oh, sorry. Got lost in the past. I wanted to know why Yukonami and Moravia didn't stop the influx of vectors. Oh, that's what he was saying before. Okay, because I was like, when he was talking about the cookies in the last part, I was like, he said Ib, and I was like, is that like a weird typo? No, he was trying... Okay, duh. Oh my god, my brain. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sure someone pointed it out in the last part, but like, obviously the last part hasn't gone up yet. But then he was saying Moravia and Yukonami really like the cookies. But it's so funny because he just said Ibuki and Yukonami, and then he flashed back to the past, so we didn't see the conversation, obviously. And then he's like, I don't want to know why Yukonami and Moravia didn't stop the influx of vectors. They said they didn't because they didn't want to draw the enemy's attention to their home. So he knows that Ibuki and Moravia are the same person, obviously, and Yukonami does too. And, I mean, technically, Ibuki has not been quiet about it. He's been like, oh, yeah, no, I'm right here every time he's Moravia or whatever, and we're like, weird! And just haven't put the pieces together. But, I mean, she doesn't know anything about the blooms, so she really would not assume... She assumes that Moravia would be like herself and be like, okay, yeah, I change a little bit, but I'm still a girl in both forms. Like, she has no fucking clue, so. That's when I knew for sure. Moravia and Yukonami were Project Environmental Adaptation success stories. The vectors were the failures. Failures? I was shocked, but at the same time, I could believe it. The project yields a lot of failures. They just dump them here in this colony. They were treated like objects. I couldn't find words. Failures, dumped. They were living things. It was simply horrific. I turned a blind eye to Project Environmental Adaptation because I didn't want to know the truth. But once I turned into a vector, the truth was force-fed to me. I was still trying to process everything I just learned. My heart was pounding. But is that all true? If there are so many vectors being created, then people must be disappearing in large groups. Well, I mean, like, what happened to the people who lived in this colony? You think Theta's just abducting people from other colonies? How did they grab that many people without anyone noticing? You misunderstand. They weren't snatching people off the streets and throwing them into black vans to use as test subjects. If they did something so obvious, of course they would have been able to cover it up. They had their own test subjects from the start. I'm thinking, like, again, what happened to the people at Tau? But also, remember, probably the professor, to be honest, helped our parents escape. I think it was our parents. I'm going with that. But like, oh, there were two people in love and someone helped them escape or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that seems a little like, it seems like it's probably our parents, right? And then that person is Uncle Yashima, who I'm assuming is probably the professor, to be fair. So they had test subjects and they're just breeding test subjects. Like, curious to why love? Well, that's weird, because then the love would make your powers disappear, but that's how they know that love makes your powers disappear. That's kind of fucked up. There's just people in cages. It's a people mill. Instead of a puppy mill, it's a people mill. What did Hyuga mean by that? If they weren't using citizens as guinea pigs, then... So that would mean... When I worked at the research district, I heard rumors about Project Environmental Adaptation, tinkering with genetics, with genetic engineering and whatnot. I never knew the selection criteria, but the test subjects' fates were sealed before birth. They were never allowed to have normal lives. It's easy enough to make people like that vanish. Like, Kamui's parents? And then Kamui being, like, a test subject, but he's free to walk around, because if his mother had some kind of magic disease or whatever, and then they're researching on him or whatnot, and then he turned into a magical girl, whatever she had was probably, You know what I mean? But then his parents were walking around like normal, but I was in disbelief. Not only were these people now vectors, they never had a chance at life, at a free life to begin with. I know, makes me sick to even talk about it. Is it a wonder I hate humans so much? I'm still a little vague on that one because he's like, they were picked from birth, so it's kind of like, did they like kidnap babies? You know what I mean? Like, you would see, oh my god, all these people, all these stillbirths and everything, or like infant deaths and stuff. You think you would have like, oh, well, there's a very high chance your child doesn't live past infancy because they're taking babies. But it sounds more like you got people in cages. Like, so I'm not really 100% sure how actually that works, because it's very vague when he's like, yeah, no, they have their own test subjects. They're not just snatching people off the streets, but it's like, what exactly do you mean by that, though? You know what I mean? And what happened to all the people in this colony? You know what I'm saying? I think this might have been the original, like test colony. I don't know. I felt like vomiting. I had no idea such terrible things were happening within the walls of the colony I grew up in. I'd lived my life in blissful ignorance. I detested the researchers. How dare they believe their work actually benefited normal citizens like me? Project Environmental Adaptation was all new ground, and that's why there were so many failures. Moravia and Yukonami are noted exceptions. I told you how Yukonami and Moravia saved my life, right? I was given an antibody shot made from Moravia's genetic information. It was that shot that prevented me from shifting into a vector. Moravia's genes have special qualities that block the transformation. Because Moravia is a successful test subject? Yeah, the antibody shot proved as much. Moravia is a being very close to a vector, but she's not entirely one. She's another species altogether. Oh. Does that mean Lizzie's antibody shot was made of Moravia's genes too? No, that one was formulated from your genes. What? We had how did they... they had my blood from, when... We know that. We know that's when we saw Rio. Ooh, he works for the bad guys, right? Was in a shadow, but giving something to Moravia and whatever. And we're like, oh my god, is that my blood from when he was bandaging me up or whatever? And then they never said anything about it, and here you go. This is why. I looked at Hyuga in surprise, like they knew I was special. Which I think is because the professor. Because I think the professor is Uncle Yashima now. And I think the researcher that helped two special people escape is him, and those were our parents. And that's how he knew I was special. So when I got attacked, he knew and Rio knew. You know what I mean? Like, it would make sense that I was in this information network from them. He met my eyes with sadness in his gaze. Haven't you realized it yet? You're unusual. Very unusual. I'm unusual? Moravia and I have something in common. She can make antibodies to block the vector transformation, and it seems I can too. Moravia is practically a vector herself, and I have something in common with her. Wait. Terror washed over me as everything fell into place. Does that mean I'm part vector too? I trembled as I looked to Hyuga for an answer. He turned away, but I saw the pity in his eyes. Yeah, but it's not that clean cut. You're definitely not like me. There was a deep sadness in Hyuga's last remark. This is where you should also be like, are the Blooms? Because I would assume, yes, they are too. You get superpowers, right? Don't you think those are unusual? We kind of knew this when Moravia was like, oh yeah, Vector, whatever. And she didn't make the connection that Moravia is just like you. If she is well, you don't know that she can transform. To be fair. You think she's like that. You don't know. Okay. So I guess that's fair why we as the main character didn't realize that Moravia can transform, we can transform, the Blooms can transform. Holy shit, we're all vectors. It's because she doesn't know that Moravia transforms. We knew that the vectors did. Not the vectors, the Blooms did like us. We're assuming Moravia is a normal girl, but is like Hyuga and Yukonami and has superpowers and whatever, and is just this subset and not like us where we have to use these crystals to transform. We don't realize that she's exactly like us. So that makes sense, actually. I probably should have figured that one out. It was like, I don't know why you're calling her a vector and not assuming that you might be one too. But, okay, duh. Hugo seemed to know a lot more than me. I initially thought he wasn't privy to any secrets, but I was rethinking that position. Huh? Yeah, kinda unusual, I guess. You and the rest of the Blooms have powers that are very similar to Yukonami's and Moravia's. You don't see a connection? He was right. The idea of us being connected made a lot of sense now. And the commander once told me the Blooms are under the research district's jurisdiction. Yeah. Then we're also products of Project Environmental Adaptation? But instead of turning into vectors, we got superpowers? But even as I said it, something didn't make sense. Oh, but hold on. I don't know about the others, but my powers didn't awaken until I was scratched by a vector. When I consider that, I don't think I was part of the research after all. Yes, you were. That's the biggest mystery about you. And we'll find out when the professor tells us. People who are attacked by vectors become vectors, but you didn't, even without a shot. It's like you had dormant powers that awakened. See? Right there. That's going right back to we had dormant powers because we were born of two people that had powers. We're special. But Uncle Yashima hid our identity and everything, and whatever. But I feel like Rio obviously knows who we are because he took our blood and whatever, or was just suspicious because he's like, huh, sus. Took our blood, gave it to Moravia, whatever. And maybe the professor never said anything, but I feel like the professor kind of made it obvious. Like, yeah, make sure, oh, whoop, she got attacked. Yeah, look out for her, because, whatever. You know what I mean? And does the commander know? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? I started to realize what Hyuga was getting at, but I understand Hyuga and Yukonami not knowing anything about me because it's not their information to be privy to, but Ibuki and Rio probably know. Right. I was actually just wondering about that myself recently. The commander of the Blooms wasn't surprised when that scratch awakened my powers. Okay, so that makes it seem like he knew. I just figured it was all business as usual for him. I never thought about it on any kind of deeper level. The commander probably knows something that he's hiding from you. What a snake. I mean, yeah, but also I'm still kind of understand why he's hiding shit. I mean, to be fair, everybody here was hiding shit from me too, instead of telling me. But it's more like you need to figure it out for yourself because maybe you're not ready to know. Fair enough. The commander hiding shit is not necessarily, to me, him being like a shady, evil bastard. It's more like, I really can't tell you, but I want to. Because, I mean, he has done things in the Bloom's route where he's been helpful to us and kind of circumventing rules and shit. You know, like letting us get Kamui out and all of those things. Just subversively under the radar so that he doesn't get in trouble, but he's in this gray area of I want to really help you, but I have to do some shady shit to help you, so I'll do that, but when people are watching, I can't do anything to help you, and I'm gonna have to lie to you about certain shit because I can't tell you these things. But if you find out, good, so it's I can't really hate him, but I can understand why you'd be mad at him for the shit he's doing, because it's hard when you're in this position and you think somebody's been lying to me. They're not telling me these things. And why would they hide this from me? And it's because you're not looking and going. I mean, she said it before, though. So she's aware. She said it. He probably can't tell us these things. So, But right now, in this situation, I can understand that she's not going to, try to make excuses for... I mean, I feel like it's not really making excuses for him, but, in the scheme of the universe, it's making excuses. He can't. He's got reasons why he can't tell us and everything. That's making excuses! Yeah, but just because it's an excuse doesn't mean it's not a valid reason. You know what I mean? Sometimes in the Venn diagram of the universe, those overlap, and, an excuse and a valid reason have a, yeah. Anyway. Moravia said you were special. Maybe it was because she sensed your unusual qualities. I don't know. She knows because she knows the professor. She's close to him. That's why she approached that bozo to get your antibodies and make an antibody shot. That bozo? I looked at Hyuga quizzically. I wasn't sure who he meant, Rio. No, Rio. Man, he doesn't even like saying his name. I decided to leave that point alone for now. Hyuga had said something more important. Antibodies. You mean my blood, right? There was a point where Rio treated a wound I got. Was that when he... Why'd you even let him near you? Hyuga's eyes narrowed, but I wasn't sure why. I told him exactly what happened. Yeah, he patched me up after the fight. I see. He seems upset. He must really hate Ryo. Well, because Ryo's a researcher, so he hates researchers, even though he used to be one. But also, maybe there's a little jealousy. You let that man get close to you and patch you up. Why? Because you weren't in the picture yet? Simmer down, sweetie. Why did you date him and not me? Because I was in high school and I met him and now we're 30 and I just met you yesterday? Simmer down. Like, you know what I mean? Don't be irrational. I made a mental note to avoid mentioning Ryo in front of Hyuga. I'm sure it's mostly he hates researchers. Ryo was full of mysteries, yes, but apparently so was I. So what am I exactly? I mumbled the question to myself, but Hyuga picked up on it. See, this is why we stopped, though, too, because it's like 45 minutes. Like, we would have been here for 3 hours. Moravia might be able to tell you more. I can only tell you this much for sure. You, me, and the rest of the Blooms, we're all at risk of turning into vectors. But instead of turning into one, you fought against them, for the sake of humanity. The researchers made vectors and disposed of them. They created a task force to put down any vectors who fought back. They were behind everything. Humans, vectors. We're all puppets and the researchers are pulling the strings. Don't you agree? Yeah, you might be onto something. I should have felt angry, but instead I felt hopeless. Hyuga's right. We were used as pawns to clean up the failed experiments the researchers dumped here. I thought I was fighting for the good of humanity. When I think about what I was really doing, I felt foolish for ever considering myself an ally of justice, and the commander had strung us all along. I'd never believe a word from him again. When I think about how similar to vectors I really am, I fell silent. Hyuga watched me intently, his eyes filled with sympathy and concern. How you feel? You hate the researchers? His question prompted me to examine my feelings. But everything in my head was so muddled because a million emotions were battling each other. I couldn't find words to express myself. Based on what I've heard, it's clear why Hyuga has sympathy for me. But do I hate the researchers? I'm still not sure, but I definitely want retribution. Testing on humans is wrong, period. Anyone who does that shouldn't get away with it. Dark emotions started to billow up through me. The commander said he worked for the research district as well. In other words, he was far more involved with the secret stuff than the Blooms were. He knew everything, and still he made us fight. Yeah, he's a bit of a weirdo, but I trusted him. I still don't necessarily think trusting him was wrong, because he's in an awkward position. So I'm still on that right now. See if he goes to, oh, no, actually, he was being really shady, or like, you know what I mean? Because it could go either way. He'd absolutely be that person that's like, I was trying to do everything I could to help you, but my hands are tied in certain situations, and he's not going to do the noble sacrifice thing. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to try to follow the rules that he can, but kind of skirt around the ones he can skirt around. You know what I mean? Like, you know, where he's trying to help you, but he's still going to have to be an asshole sometimes. You know, imperfect. As opposed to the, like, I am going to help you and I will do the noble thing and risk my job for you. Like, nah, he ain't that noble. You know what I mean? Or, I mean, he could potentially also go down the route of like, yeah, no, I was trying to help you to gain your trust and I'm actually the one who turned all of you because this was all my idea. And be the big bad evil for all we know. Because, like, the kind of half-incompetent idiots have fooled us before. Let's be real. So I have trust issues a little bit with these characters now. You know? Like, but if he turned down the full evil, I would have been like, I'm not 100% surprised. Only a little, because I still feel like he's just in that gray area where, like, he's trying to do the things he can to help us and he doesn't necessarily love what he's doing, but that's why he's choosing to do it. Because if he let someone else be responsible for us and he wasn't our commander, he knows somebody else would just totally abuse us. Like, well, the Blooms, right? They'd totally abuse the Blooms, not care one fucking bit, because we're just science experiments. We're just garbage vectors to them, right? We're not humans. Even though we're saving their asses, we're still lesser forms of life to them. You know what I mean? We're tools to be used. But he thinks of us differently and is like, okay, I know I still have to treat you like tools to be used, and I don't particularly love that, but I have to do that to keep this place secure, my job and everything, and this position. But when you're trying to do things, I'm gonna look the other way and pretend I didn't notice you doing certain shit. And I'm gonna go in and make sure nobody's around when you're trying to break Kamui out. And I'm gonna do little things that help you without you realizing that I'm doing it, because then I can feign ignorance when they ask me, I had no idea that they broke. Wow, golly gee, she broke Kamui out? Shucksy doodles, I had no idea. You know what I mean? And it's people might be like, sus. But they got nothing to go on. They got no evidence against him. You know what I mean? So he, I still think he fits more in that gray area. Doesn't mean you have to love him and be because again, he's not fully noble where he's going to risk everything for everyone, he's kind of being a normal person, because nobody's like that for real. We see that in movies and TV shows. I will be noble and I will sacrifice everything. Fuck that shit. Nobody's sacrificing everything for some random people. You know what I mean? There might be some random noble people, but most of us are if I think I can go in and rescue someone and not get hurt, otherwise I'm going to call the proper people to do it. I'm not going to risk my life when I'm not qualified to run into a burning building and rescue someone. You know what I mean? I'm not qualified for that. I'm not going to be that noble. I'll call the fire department. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to be, I will rescue you and risk my life. Hell no. I'm not that noble. Most people aren't, because we understand our limitations. I'm going to end up dead in there too. And what the hell is the point of that? That's more work for the fire department. Instead of waiting for them to come get your ass out, they're going to have to come in and get me, and then you probably die because they had to rescue my ass for being stupid, trying to run in there and making more trouble for them. Nah, I ain't that dumb. You know what I mean? But movies and media kind of promote the noble person who would risk their life and just run into a burning building when they know nothing and they're going to cause more problems. You know what I mean? As they're the heroes and they're wonderful. Well, you know what? But the people who they just called 911 and whatever. It's yeah, because they would have caused more problems. You're going to hate on those people, but if they ran into a burning building and then got trapped and made more work for the fire department, then you'd call them idiots for doing that. And say they should have just waited and called the fire department. So, those people can't win. You know what I mean? You can only win if you do the noble thing and come out on top. Which is going to be really fucking rare. You know what I mean? So, the commander is really just the guy who's I'm going to call the fire department and let them do their damn jobs. And, maybe, oh, I see your cat. I'm going to grab your cat so he's not running. I got your cat and I put him in my car so your cat's safe and he's not running around wild. Don't worry. You know what I mean? Or whatever, I did something little. It's not very noble, but I'm also not gonna do something stupid, But anyway, how could the researchers act so inhumanely? Because they don't care. Hugo looked away when he heard my question. They convinced themselves they were righteous. That's how they justified mistreating humans. I was one myself, so I kind of get it. Researchers put their work above all else. When you're pursuing answers, it's easy to lose sight of your sense of right and wrong. All the researchers on Project Environmental Adaptation were first-rate. Probably lost themselves in the work. Which I think is the professor, he was like that and then was wait. There's something snapped and was you were treating people like this and this is bullshit. And that's why he, ran and kidnapped the kids. You weren't like them, though. Hugo shook his head. Nothing first-rate about me. I suspected Hugo was being modest, but at the same time I was relieved. So Hugo wasn't that kind of researcher. Then I thought of something. I wonder what kind of research my mother and father did. Were they also involved with Project Environmental Adaptation? Yes. But they were vector pawns. Telling you. When that comes out, because it was such a throwaway comment saying, oh, there was a researcher who helped two people escape, blah, 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 and fall in love. And it was just such a throwaway comment. And it was that's our parents. And Uncle Yashima's the person who helped them escape. And we didn't know the professor existed, so I think it was fair to be wait, was the commander? Is he? But I think I feel like it's definitely the professor, and I think that fits in a lot better. But, when we find that out, Like, wait, our parents were research guinea pigs and Uncle Yashima's the professor and he helped them escape and whatever. And that's how he knew that we'd have superpowers and blah, blah, blah and all that shit. And like, whatever. It's like, you know, it's going to be like it's going to be like, I fucking told you. Like, you know what I mean? Straight from Kamui's route, right? Like, you're like, told you. Fucking told you. Like, I'm not going to be surprised. There's other things I might be surprised about, but I feel like they threw that in and just left it, and it was like, it's supposed to be obvious. Because it's not like they're just throwing in random stories, and I heard about this, and I heard this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Everything's been pertinent so far, you know? Somehow. Even if I forget about it. Despite our conversation about research, I never thought to ask about my parents until now. After all, I knew next to nothing about them, on purpose. What's up? It's nothing. I decided not to bring up my parents. I didn't want to get off topic. The Project Environmental Adaptation researchers were wrong, and they shouldn't get away with waving away their ethics. But maybe the researchers had different intentions at first. Maybe even the commander was under orders not to tell me the truth about Lizzie. If that's so, I can't really blame him. I know people will be like, she's being too kind. No, but she's not wrong. He is not allowed to tell you, even if he wanted to. I was still beyond confused, but at least I felt like I was fully equipped to try and make sense of my feelings. I don't feel angry. I'm just sad. I finally landed on a firm answer. Hyuga nodded, encouraging me to continue. The researchers sacrificing humans for their cause, only for them to make vectors. It's depressing, to say the least. How could they treat fellow human beings like lab animals? I can't understand it. Now that I know everything, what was behind making us fight the vectors? I just want to know what it was all for. But that question comes from a place of sadness more than anger. I see. Hyuga nodded and smiled, though his eyes were still sad. You're pretty straightforward. Nothing like me, eh, Spacey? I was surprised at how disappointed he sounded. Did he want us to be the same? Did he want me to nurse hatred and resentment? I would be like, do you want me to be the same? Because, like, do you want me to nurse hatred and resentment is very to the point and a little harsh. But, like, do you want us to be the same? Is a little more gentle and kind of like, you know. Yeah. Do you wish I felt the same as you? Huh? Oh, no. Hyuga seemed to realize at that moment that his choice of words was odd. Would you be happier if I did? I don't know. Can't even put a finger on my own feelings anymore. I'm relieved you don't feel the same way I do, but it's still a bit of a letdown. Oh, I'm not even making any sense. Forget what I said. I'm talking nonsense. Hyuga stopped talking and got up from his chair. I shouldn't keep going on. You're still recovering. Take it easy the rest of the day. When I realized Hyuga was about to leave, I grabbed his hand out of reflex. Spacey? Sorry. I have no idea why I did that. Why did I grab him? I let go and looked away. No need to apologize. There's something else you want to talk to me about? Yeah, just one more thing before you go. It's about my parents. I decided to bring them up after all. Hyuga's expression grew inquisitive. Your parents? They died when I was young. I have no memories of them. The person who's watched over me this whole time, he told me my parents worked in the research district. What? I have no idea what kind of research they did, but since you also worked there, I was wondering if you ever came across them. Their names were Togo and Sana Takanashi. Do they sound familiar? I hoped beyond hope, but Hyuga shook his head regretfully. Takanashi, sorry. Never heard that name before. But if they died when you were just a kid, there's a chance they were long gone by the time I started working in the research district. I mean, to be fair, like, it's not like the man's 30. Like, I know Ryo's an adult, and and like, obviously, Yukonami was supposedly around 19 or whatever. But I would still think Hyuga is not, like, I mean, he's still gonna be probably at least 20, maybe. But you know what I mean? Or, I mean, I work in the research, but then again, maybe don't go to college. You just like go and you do trade job. You know what I mean? Like you learn school because like, what's the point of going to like people need to work in this, but you know what I mean? Like college is kind of a scam anyway. You know what I mean? Like you don't really need a degree to do a lot of jobs. You get training on the job. And in the type of world we're living in, it would make more sense to be like, forget that. Why waste time with that? We need teachers to teach students in high school, whatever. We teach them about the world and history and all that stuff. And then they go out and they get a job and they work and they learn on the job because that's the best training you can fucking get for what you want to do. You know what I mean? Like, I could understand doing like a community college type thing where it's like, okay, here's where you take a bunch of different types of classes you didn't take in high school. Like, different types of like job type classes where you kind of learn about different jobs and you figure out ones that sound interesting to you because you don't know unless you learn about those jobs or try them out. So you almost do like a trade rotation or something. But it seems like we do that on our field trips. We go to different different areas and we kind of learn about what's going on there. So it's almost like, you know what I mean? So like he could be 20 and have been was a researcher for a couple years, you know what I mean? As soon as he graduated high school type of a thing. So even if he's in his early 20s, our parents died probably like 14 years ago. I mean, he would have been a toddler. Like, he would have been like, what, 6? So you know what I'm saying? Like, he definitely would not have, our parents wouldn't have been around when he was there unless the man's 30. And that's kind of fucked up because Rio's the grown-ass adult. So, you know. Oh, right. You've got a point. So your parents were researchers, and then one day your latent powers awakened? Bit of a strange coincidence. See, he's smart. That's why he was a researcher. He's like, huh, are you sure they weren't experiments? I think they were. I can dig around a bit if you're curious. I thought for a moment, but decided against it. Thanks, but I think I'm fine for now. I might want to find the truth someday, but right now I feel like I have more important things to deal with. Hugo seemed to respect my decision. He reached out to lightly stroke my hair. I see. If you change your mind, let me know. Well, we've talked long enough. I'll go home now. We all live in the same building. You know. Hugo gathered up the mugs and prepared to make his exit. Sorry to keep you here for so long, but thanks. Thanks for telling me so much. See ya, and get some rest. And with that, he gave me a warm smile and turned to leave. Look, all it took was brutally attacking me, and now he's goddamn marshmallow. Once Hugo left, the room became silent and still once again. I'm wiped out, but it's more of a mental exhaustion than physical. I'd absorbed a lot of information at once. I was shocked. My brain and heart both felt like they were in disarray. But I didn't regret finding out the truth. That alone was worth chasing down Hugo and getting injured. But the whole matter of how I came to be... Hugo had certainly given me a lot of information, but now I just had more questions that needed answers. I still know nothing about my mom and dad. Maybe my unusual traits are somehow linked to them and their work. I'd always been able to email Uncle Yashima with questions, but that wasn't possible right now. I had no choice but to drop the issue. I guess people in Theta regard me as a missing person now? If they find out I'm in the Vectors colony, they'll probably assume I've defected and I'm siding with the enemy. I stopped my thoughts from going any further down that path. It's not like thinking anymore would help. I just work myself up and probably get a fever. I want to think about something else. Hugo's face rose up in my mind. He'd shown me his kind side, which was so different from how he presented himself at first. Recalling Hugo's smile made me smile a little to myself in turn. Hugo's a kind person, but his heart's filled with a bitter hate for humankind. I could still see Hugo staring down his former colleague just before rage overtook him. He'd had every intent to kill them. But even if he'd managed to go through with it, it wouldn't have brought him any satisfaction. His heart would be cold and hollow. That's how I saw things anyway. Nothing like me. I repeated Hugo's words out loud. Why is Hugo so fixated on the ways that I'm different from him? Before that, he also said something like, "You're like us, sure, but you're also different." It was like he was implying he wishes I were more like him. Is Hugo... maybe... But I pushed myself to my limit, and I drifted off into a deep slumber. Yeah, seriously, if we had kept going, that would have been a 2-hour-long part, because that... Seriously, there was no transition until right now? And this was like a whole part. So, like, shit. That was a long ass scene. Anyway, I will see you guys next time. Remember to give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe to see more.